There have been weight loss tips that have been shared a lot over the years, and some of them just simply don't work anymore. And if you keep using these strategies, you'll probably find that you're getting frustrated with losing weight, gaining it back, and repeating the whole cycle again. So today I'm sharing the 9 weight loss mistakes that you really probably shouldn't be using anymore and what you can do instead to actually see results. Let's dive into it. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's in nutrition human performance, and today's video is sponsored by Gem. More on them in a bit. Okay, the first is one that you hear all the time still, and it's eat in moderation. Now this sounds like a good idea and it's not necessarily bad, but in practice, it just really doesn't work. What the sentiment of eat everything in moderation really means is to eat what is reasonable of any given food. This thought is that if you can eat anything, then it prevents this restriction type of mentality and therefore makes it so you're more likely to stick to your progress for the long term. But you can see that we already have a definition problem here because what is considered reasonable for one person might not be really reasonable at all for another. What we consider to be reasonable will really vary depending on how much we like a certain food. So if you really like pizza, then you might consider it reasonable to have a couple slices a day versus somebody who maybe doesn't love it as much will recognize it as a more processed food and sees it as more of a treat item. Some foods are also just studied to be more addictive than others, specifically those ultra processed fats and carbs. In fact, those have actually been studied to have addictive-like qualities. You'll often find these in a lot of processed foods, so like crackers, chips, cereals, a lot of baked goods, a lot of fried food. These are nutrient poor and ultimately makes up a lot of people's diet. And because these foods can have addictive-like qualities, eating what might be considered small, reasonable amounts of these could trigger an addictive-like spiral. These foods can hijack our hunger and satiety and shift our cravings into craving more and more sugar and processed foods. This is why this eat everything in moderation can't really apply to modern day because we have so many addictive foods on the market that make it really difficult, if not impossible, to eat these foods in small amounts. Which of course I've talked so much on my channel on the certain types of nutrient-dense foods that can actually help to shut off hunger and cravings and make it so much easier to achieve a weight loss or a wellness goal, which we'll get into that in a second as well. Okay, the second weight loss advice is eat until you're 80% full. Now the thought behind this is that it takes a little bit of time for our satiety hormones to reach our brain and tell us we're full and satisfied. So if you eat until you're about 80% full, then in about 20 minutes, those satiety hormones will have reached your brain and you're actually really like 100% full. That is if you're actually eating the types of foods that raise your satiety hormones. Now these are going to come primarily from protein, fat, and fiber. But if you look back at that first example and eat a lot of those ultra processed carbs and fats, you're never really getting that full activation of those satiety hormones. So this eat until you're 80% rule doesn't really even apply. With these type of less satiating foods, there's kind of really only 2 options. You either still feel hungry or you feel excessively full. Now this 80% rule can actually really apply when it comes to eating the right types of foods, just definitely not in today's society where most people are eating the wrong types of foods. And this advice is often given without that additional context of satiety hormones. So it makes it seem like you can just follow that rule with any type of food and achieve those results. Okay, the third weight loss advice is a lot of cardio. Cardio is very popular for weight loss because it can help you to lose weight initially. And that's because it is going to be one of the biggest calorie burn type of exercises. But notice I did say initially, and that's because cardio doesn't really do anything for maintaining muscle mass. And our muscle is what's going to largely dictate how healthy and fast our metabolism is. Not to mention a lot of other health concerns like cardiovascular risk as well as osteoporosis risk, but that's a whole other issue. If you're just using tools like cardio and general eat less, this can result in quite a bit of muscle loss, which can slow the metabolism and make it so you have to run more, eat less in order to continue seeing results. Instead, if you focus on strength training or resistance training, this can help to maintain muscle mass or slightly even increase muscle mass, which helps to keep the metabolism healthy and strong. Now I want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Gem. Gem is a really cool whole food based multivitamin. And what that means, it's literally made out of whole food ingredients. So rather than getting like isolated forms of zinc or isolated forms of vitamin K2, Gem forms these little delicious bites with the ingredients that are actually jam-packed full of those nutrients. And whenever you can get vitamins or minerals in their whole food natural form, it tends to be a lot more bioavailable, which means our body can actually absorb and use it so much easier. In the past, I never really took a multivitamin because they use those isolated forms, but I love that Gem uses whole food ingredients while still covering so many nutritional bases. Gem believes in eating vitamins the way nature intended. Their bites are packed with over 20 whole food vitamins, minerals, superfoods, prebiotics, and probiotics to help fill the gaps in daily nutrition. I love that Gem is a chewable vitamin made from whole food ingredients like fermented chickpeas for vitamin K2, quinoa sprouts for B vitamins, turmeric for inflammation, and vitamin D3 from algae. Gem takes a holistic approach to health and uses whole food ingredients that work best together together to be best absorbed in the body. And they just taste so great. It makes taking a multivitamin so much more tasty. And right now for my community, Gem is offering 50% off your first month. So go to dailygem.com/autumnbates and use my code autumnbates at checkout so you don't miss out on the discount. I'll also have the link down description below. Okay, the fourth is to remove red meat. Now people are often told this because red meat tends to have a higher fat content and therefore might be higher in calories than chicken. But red meat is so much more nutrient dense than chicken. In fact, I recently shared how it was rated one of the healthiest foods you could possibly eat. Full video linked right up here if you want to check that out. Red meat helps you get a high quality bioavailable source of protein to help prevent muscle loss during a weight loss process, and it allows you to get a lot of necessary nutrients while not feeling as hungry. In fact, red meat and specifically ground beef was something I ate a lot during my 20-pound postpartum weight loss journey. Okay, number 5 is to count calories. Now I know that this can help for some people just to purely bring attention to what they're eating in general. And if you see it as a progression to making more additional steps along your weight loss or wellness journey, then that's one thing. But a lot of people are stuck with the idea that counting calories is the main tool to help them achieve a weight loss goal. But the problem with counting calories is that it doesn't account for the type of calories that you're eating. Calories are just an energy unit, and a lot of people just haven't been taught how to eat, which means that you could be eating less calories, but those calories could be from foods that are just not going to support a long-term goal. Again, just like with running, you'll probably lose weight in the beginning, but because there's no attention to the right types of foods, then that ultimately could very likely and often does lead to muscle loss and a slower metabolism and that yo-yo diet approach. This is why a lot of people have great success with counting calories initially, they gain the weight back, and then they try to do it again and they find it's a lot harder. Rather, instead, if we eat the types of foods that help to naturally raise our satiety hormones, it makes counting calories really unnecessary. Because it just so happens the foods that raise our satiety hormones, prevent us from overeating, also happen to be the most nutrient-dense foods that we could eat. So they make weight loss a lot easier, and it also helps to nourish our body in the process. Okay, number 6 is to switch to low-fat dairy. Just like with the red meat, this is from a calorie perspective, but ironically, research consistently shows that full-fat dairy is actually better at helping to prevent obesity and weight gain than the low-fat option. Probably because it does have that combination of protein and fat that helps to raise our satiety and prevent us from feeling hungry. But also as a little side note, there's some really great nutrients that you specifically find in the fat portion of dairy products. The main important one being vitamin K2, which is crucial for helping to get calcium out of the arteries and into the bones. So full-fat dairy is more satiating, it's more nutrient dense, and it also just tastes better. Okay, number 7 is to eat whole grain. Now theoretically, again, this should be a lot better option than eating refined grains. It should be more blood glucose stabilizing, it therefore should be better at helping to prevent hunger. But what classifies as whole grain is the problem, because you can still get really highly processed whole grain ingredients and it's still considered whole grain, as I'm sure you've seen with a lot of various cereals that are on the market. And these really processed grain foods are already really high in carbohydrates, but then when they are also processed, it makes the glycemic load so high, which the glycemic load is a measurement of how quickly a food will spike our blood sugar level. And when we get this really big spike in blood sugar, it causes a very big crash. And already unstable blood sugar levels are not a good thing from a health perspective, but from a weight loss perspective, blood sugar crashes often happen like 2 hours after you've eaten the meal, which means you're going to be really ravenously hungry within 2 hours after eating that meal. And the foods that you typically crave with these blood sugar crashes are going to be really fast and easy absorbable foods that are rich in sugar and processed grains, which just perpetuates the cycle. Plus, if you're carb sensitive, then probably any type of grain isn't really a good idea at this time, given that grains are generally just going to be more high glycemic load with a lot less nutritional content. But instead, if you do choose to eat grains and if you are not carb sensitive, then making the switch to actual true 100% whole grain in the way that you would imagine whole grain, like the literal kernel or wheat berry, is much more blood sugar stabilizing. And actually making sure to pair those true whole grains with high quality sources of protein and fiber and fat to make sure that the blood sugar level is going to be really stable and you're actually eating the types of foods that raise satiety hormones, because ultimately grains are not going to do that as effectively. Or just remove them entirely. You can get plenty more satiating and nutrient dense foods from protein, fat, and fiber instead. Okay, number 8 is a dietary guideline classic, and it's to limit your total sugar intake to 10% or less, and that's added sugar intake. Again, the fact that they're at least limiting, I guess, is a good thing, but this still amounts to 200 calories worth of added sugar, which is 50 grams of added sugar, which equates to about a quarter of a cup. Now, yes, this is better than having a cup of added sugar, but having 10% of our intake coming from absolutely zero nutritional value and also from food that has potential addictive qualities, this really contributes to hijacking our satiety and leading to overeating well beyond our body's needs. Now, again, it's not like you can never have a sweet flavor, but if we focus on getting that sweet flavor from whole food ingredients, then this is going to have some nutrient value as well as be much more blood sugar stabilizing. So like raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, even some banana or mango if your carb sensitivity allows for it. They have some type of health benefit that also helps to make you feel more satisfied than the alternative, which I use these all the time in my smoothies. You can check out one of my favorite protein, fat, and fiber rich smoothie right here. Okay, number 9 is to eat small, frequent meals. Now, the idea for this is that if you eat more frequently, then you won't be as hungry. But research actually does not back this up, and in fact, it shows the opposite to be true. Studies comparing 6 small meals per day versus 3 full meals, all at the same amount of total food intake, found that those who ate the 3 meals felt way more full and satisfied. Now, this is likely because when you eat meals, you're actually able to eat enough of the protein, fat, and fiber to raise your satiety hormones and prevent hunger for about 4 hours. But when you eat those small meals, you're never actually hitting that threshold to feel full and satisfied, so you're always just constantly a little bit hungry. In fact, sticking to meals is something that I did throughout my postpartum weight loss journey, and if you want to check out all the details of exactly what I did to help me achieve my goals without counting calories and without feeling hungry, you can find that with this video right here. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.